With the Perseid meteor shower next week, I thought it'd be good timing to do a meteor shower editing tutorial video. So the photo that I'll be working on today is actually a photograph that I took of the Geminid meteor shower in December of 2020. I actually have the photograph hanging behind me on the wall here. It's a little bit late to go back and take footage in the field. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what it was like out in the field, and then we'll jump into the Lightroom, the Photoshop, and other. So when I was out in the field, it was very cold out. It was minus 30 degrees, and I froze 4 batteries on my camera that evening. Fortunately for the Perseid meteor shower, it's in the middle of August, so you generally don't have to deal with those temperatures. That's a lot more convenient. I kind of took an approach where I wanted to maximize the amount of quality in my photograph that I could get. So I actually used a star tracker. I set up my camera on a star tracker. That step is optional, but what it allowed me to do is take tracked exposures of the sky that are a little bit longer than I would be able to take if I didn't have it on a star tracker. And that just helps me to stack some images together, reduce noise, enhance the sharpness, bring out details in the sky. So you can really skip the star tracker step, but the reason why I wanted to use it is I gave myself a good background sky image, and that was great. The other thing that I did is after I took my sky images, I set my camera up on the tripod. I took the star tracker off, and I just took a number of photos of the landscape, and so this can actually be part of the rest of the photographs that you take. But essentially what I'm doing here is I'm taking a number of photographs that I'm going to be able to take into Photoshop afterwards, and I'm going to stack them, and this is going to help me be able to bring out some of the detail that's in the foreground and also reduce some of that noise because I'm shooting at such high ISO because it's at nighttime. The last step in the field was basically to just set my camera up on the tripod on an intervalometer and aim at the sky and fire away. So it was really nice. I had a fire that evening nearby down the hill, so I didn't have any of the light impacting my photographs. But you know, every half hour or so, walk up to the camera, check on it, make sure it's not too cold. I had my dew heater on at night. If there's going to be a drastic change between the temperature from the beginning of the night throughout the night, it might be worthwhile to have a dew heater on your lens. It basically prevents condensation from building up, and then it gets your lens all foggy, and then your images aren't sharp and they become unusable. So an alternative to that is you can just use like those hand warmers and use an elastic band to attach it to the end of your lens, and that should help out a little bit if you don't have a dew heater. So with that, basically that was my data collection process in the field, and so I'll show you what those sets of images look like. And then we'll get into the editing portion of the video here. So let's begin. Okay, so now we're gonna head into Lightroom here, and I've got 146 images in this folder. Obviously I've deleted a lot when I came home that evening. But basically there's 2 sets of images that I have here, so I've just unstack these, and if we want to take a quick look at them, we can actually see that these were shot at f3.5, 61-second exposures, 24 millimeters ISO 2000. If you look at the histogram here, it's exposed for sort of the left third. That's about where you want for these types of images. So as a 60-second exposure, I mean, you can zoom in and as you can see, there's a tiny bit of noise, but it's not that much. The stars are pretty sharp, and there's absolutely no trailing, which is what the advantage that the star tracker gives me. Just because there's quite a few images in the set, I'm going to choose to use a smaller set, but as you can kind of look at as I scroll through some of these images, you can actually see that while the stars are staying in place, the horizon is actually shifting throughout the photographs. Now this is because the star tracker is actually rotating opposite to the rotation of the Earth. So you'll either end up with stars that drift or a foreground that drifts. So this is the set of images that I've decided I'm going to use. It's again, they're pretty much the same exposure settings, it's just a smaller set of images, so I've decided for the purpose of this video to do that. Maybe I might bring up the exposure just a tiny little bit here, probably not super necessary. Okay, that's good. The next thing that I'm just going to do is I make sure that I have all 5 of these images selected. I'm going to right click, and I have an export here that says Milky Way to Siril. That's just the export preset that I've created, but it just loads the files into a program called Siril that I use. So Siril is actually great for stacking Milky Way deep sky images. It's basically that's its sole purpose. So I've gone ahead and I've loaded the directory. It's just a file that it's drawing images from, and I've pulled up these 5 photos from the Geminid meteor shower here. So I'm just gonna put in a sequence name and hit convert. So I'm just gonna, it basically converts it into a file type that it can work with a little bit more easily, but it will spit out a TIFF, a 16-bit TIFF at the end of the process. If you're a Windows user, Deep Sky Stacker is a program that's basically equivalent to the one that I'm using now. So once I've got the files converted, it actually spits out 2 windows here. So we have the RGB image, and then we have it broken down into the red, the green, and the blue channel. So it just kind of shows us what's going on here. One thing that I will do here is I'll just click auto stretch here, and it just kind of updates the view here so that I can see it a little bit better. No need to really go into the sequence for pre-processing. The pre-processing would be that if I used any other sort of calibration frames, which I didn't use for this, so it doesn't matter. What we want here is the global star alignment, and basically we just hit go register. So what the process is doing now is it's essentially analyzing the photos and identifying the pixels where the stars are, and then it's going to go through and make sure that all those pixels line up in every single one of the photos. So this part of the process can generally take a little bit more time than others. We can see now that the image just looks like it's got a whole bunch of orange dots on it. Those would be all the stars that it's picked. So now it's going to go through frame by frame and make sure that all those are in alignment. Okay, so now that it's finished registering, we just move on to the final step of the process here. So basically we're just doing average stacking with rejection. So if one of the photos doesn't meet the average, it just gets tossed. We shouldn't have a problem because I've done this before. So I just hit start stacking and away we go. Okay, so the stacking process is completed. It took about a minute. The total processing time for these 5 files together was about 5 minutes, including the file conversion, the registration, and the stacking. So now if we take a look at this, and I'm actually just going to rotate this image 90 degrees so it fills more of this box. The one thing about Siril is it doesn't give you it doesn't really allow you to expand this window to see more of the image, so you're kind of working in a small space. So this allows me to see it a little bit better. One thing you might notice is that the horizon here has become a lot more blurry, and that's just because the horizon's moving in the number of photos, and it kind of blended them together. So it's kind of an average of all 5 of the horizons, but the sky has remained super sharp. So I'm just going to quickly go through and do a little bit of editing in here. We're just going to do a quick histogram transformation. So we're just going to hit that auto stretch button and apply that. It just kind of stretches out the histogram automatically. Kind of easy way to go about doing that. The next sort of thing that is good to do is color calibration. So in this case, I actually need to grab a selection of an area off of the single channel pane here. So I'm just going to look here, and I want to find maybe an area that doesn't have a lot of stars in it. Right around here looks okay. And I'm just going to click use current selection and neutralize background. And you can see that it kind of drops some of that color cast from my photo here. For the white reference, you kind of want to grab an area where there's a lot of white. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab an area right around the Orion Nebula here and just see what happens. Just going to use current selection. Okay, and I'm just going to apply that and close this window. Other edits that you can do in here, just remove some green noise. It's usually something that's worthwhile doing. And maybe sometimes I might work with a little bit of the color saturation in Siril before I move on. So you can adjust the global saturation. Don't know if I like that effect. It's okay, a little bit too much orange maybe. Dial that back a bit, see what happens. Unfortunately, there is still a bit of light pollution in the photograph, even though I was in a pretty dark area. So what I might do is I might just grab this orange, brown, yellow channel here and see if I can drag this down a bit and just see what happens here. Processing, yeah, it seems to have taken quite a lot out of there. That's okay with me because I don't want that color in there anyways. So now I've basically got my sky, and if I want, I can kind of adjust the color of the tone of the sky a little bit later with a little bit of color grading, and when I get this file over into Photoshop. So basically all I'm just going to do is save as. I'm just going to have it in the folder that it's in, and I make sure that I have TIFF selected, and away we go. So I'm just going to type my name here in the image copyright, and I make sure that I have 16-bit selected and save. Okay, so the next part of the process here is to work on our foreground. So you'll see I have the set of 11 images here, and this one here is actually a file that I've processed previously in Photoshop, but I'll show you basically what's going on here. So I collected a number of photos here. These ones are all 30 seconds long, so the star trailing isn't too bad, but it's obviously pretty bad. But what you'll see going through these photos is that the horizon stays straight and the stars are drifting across, which is the opposite of the sky photos. The other thing is that their horizon is pretty pretty sharp in focus. So we have, this is the data that we're basically going to use to construct our foreground. Okay, so basically I just want to select all my images. As you can see, I've done a little bit of editing on them. They were a bit darker previously, and then I just kind of raised the exposure, and I like basically just did some tonal adjustments to bring out more color, detail, stuff like that in the foreground. The next step that I want to do is I just want to right click, making sure that all of them are selected, and I'm just going to go up to edit in, and I want to open as layers in Photoshop. So we're going to turn it into a smart object, but if you open as a smart object in Photoshop, it'll open each one of these files individually, and so then you'll have 10 separate files that you're working with, but this way it opens them all into Photoshop in one file that we're working with. This will take a little bit of time because each of these files are pretty big, especially when we're working on them as 16-bit TIFF files. Okay, so it looks like we've got all of these files loaded as layers in Photoshop here. So we can zoom in, kind of take a look at it. It looks good. One thing that we'd like to do, I'm just going to select all the photos here. So there's auto align layers, which you can hit. I was on a tripod, so I shouldn't I shouldn't need to do this, but you know, maybe there's a little bit of wind and it swayed, or I don't know, anything could have happened, right? So doesn't hurt just to make sure that the photos are in perfect alignment. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I just trimmed out that little bit of the corner there where we had a bit of an issue. So the next thing that I want to do is I just want to go up to layer here, and I want to find smart objects. I want to hit convert to smart object. It took a few minutes to process this down into a smart object, but as you can see over here in my layers, it's just kind of merged them all into one layer. So the next thing that we're just going to go do is we're going to head over to layers. We're going to go back to the smart object menu here, and we want to go stack mode and hit median, and we're just going to give it a few more moments to process that function. We've got the median blend mode finished processing now. As you can see, we've got a problem. It's kind of blurred the foreground. So what I suspect was the issue was when I did the auto align. So I'm just going to go back into my history, and I'm going to see if I can find that point. Auto align layer. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to this point in my history on the file to just before I aligned the layers. That's actually a fantastic trick for if you make a mistake. So now what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to grab all the layers, and I'm just going to go back and create a smart object again. And what you'll see is that it actually, the auto align layers and everything below it is now gone because that history, I've just overwritten it. But we'll just do those last couple steps over again real quick. Okay, these results are more in line with what we're looking for. If I zoom in here, we can see that the tree line is still in focus. It's good. All the stars are just averaged out basically. You can still see the lines in there, they're faint. If we kind of go in here and look at some of this stuff, if I just wanted to kind of hit undo, I can show you, you can see now how much noise there is in this file. This was before the median stacking. You can see what the stars look like just in this little zoomed in area. And then I'm just gonna hit this redo button here, and it's gonna show you all that noise just gone. So that's more in line with what we're looking for here. I'm just going to take an opportunity just save as. I'm just going to save it in the same folder that it's in, because it took a long time to get here, so we don't want to lose this work and have to reprocess it all over again. Now that we've blended this for noise reduction, we don't actually need the smart object anymore. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to right click on the layer and I'm going to hit rasterize layer. So that just kind of removes the smart object, and it basically collapses everything into this final layer that you see here. Now there's a little bit of an orange cast in some of this grass at the beginning. We want to get rid of that, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a hue saturation layer, and I'm just going to grab that tool here, and I want to grab this color here. Oops, nope, that's not what we want to do here. I'm just going to put that back to 0. We grab the yellows. That's the problem. We want. It doesn't really give us an option for the oranges. So basically, what we can do is we can just make this a little bit more narrow and see if we can get rid of some of that orange cast in there. We don't want to get rid of too much of that yellow. If we need, we might be able to grab some reds, maybe, and from a little bit of this side here. Okay, let's kind of got rid of some of those a bit. If we want, we can change that hue a bit, and now that kind of blends in a little bit more. So if we just hit the before and after on that layer, we can basically see that the color from probably a headlamp is removed. That looks a little bit better. Okay, I'm just going to collapse that layer in. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I just want to grab the star stacked image that I did from before, and I'm just going to grab the file and drag it right into Photoshop in the file I'm working in here. Photoshop imported it sideways, so I just kind of transformed it until it fit what I needed, and also imported it as a smart object. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit rasterize layer because I don't want it to be a smart object there. So I'm just going to drag it down to be underneath my foreground layer. Now this is one of the only Photoshop plugins that I actually use. It's called TK Action Panel. It's a tool for luminosity masking. But basically what I want to do is I want to select just the foreground or just the sky, because I want to make a mask that will hide the sky on this top image. I can see that there's a line that's quite a bit of contrast between the horizon and the sky. So I think maybe just a normal lights mask will help. So basically as I go through here, what you're seeing is a pixel-based mask, and a mask is just something that wherever the pixels are white, things will shine through, and wherever they're black, they won't shine through. So I'm just kind of looking for the right mask here. I grabbed a lights 2, and I'm just trying to see if I can bring that contrast up a little bit more. I'm just gonna, this is basically like a level slider on the mask. It's looking pretty good. The main thing that I want to see happen here is just a very distinct sort of transition between the whites, and I just want a sharp transition between the sky and the foreground here, or a very contrasty. So the next thing that I can do is I can just grab a big white brush and just paint in the sky here, big broad strokes. The only thing that really requires some finessing is where that foreground meets the sky. So we just kind of clean that up a bit. And similarly, just grab a big black brush here and paint in the foreground here. Okay, there we go, easy peasy. Now I've just selected basically the foreground here. I can take a quick scan through here and see if there's anything that requires a little bit of work. Maybe here I can just kind of clean this edge up a bit. Normally I might take a little bit more time to clean that up. I'm not going to fuss about it right now, and honestly these little specks won't make too much difference if I just kind of do this. And really, if I wanted, I can, yeah, okay, there, the tree's only this tall now. So because I have the mask where it's black on the foreground and white on the horizon, I believe I actually just want to invert that, because now what's going to show through is what's white. So I'm just going to click this button to apply the mask to the photograph, and there we go with a perfectly blended sky. If I wanted to adjust some of those details a little bit further, I can just go into this select and mask tool. Maybe I can shift the edge outward a little bit, or I can shift the edge inward a little bit, just kind of making that mask a little bit cleaner. And so I just hit OK, and it will have just kind of it basically shifts the pixels inwards so that you're selecting less of the object. Okay, we don't want this layer here, that's extra, but that's looking pretty good. So essentially what I want to do next is I'm actually just going to grab the crop tool, and I'm going to drag this corner in a little bit. I noticed that the images don't perfectly align, so I'm just going to like crop in a tiny bit of the edge here. I'm just keeping the ratio the same as the original ratio. Okay, and any edges that don't align doesn't matter anymore. Okay, perfect. Now we have clean edges. We've got a perfectly blended sky in foreground, but it looks a little bit dark. Maybe we might want to fix this up a little bit. One thing that we might be able to do is maybe we want to grab like a levels adjustment. I'm going to hold the Option key, that's Alt on Windows, and I'm just going to click, I'm just going to make sure I have that layer selected, and I'm going to, you can see in between those layers I have that little icon there with the arrow pointing downwards. I'm just going to click there, and it's created a clipping mask. So what that means is that this levels layer is only going to apply to the layer that it's clipped to, which in this case is the foreground. Okay, so now I can play with this levels a bit. I can bring those highlights in. Maybe something a little bit like that. Oh, too much. Something in there. You know, it just gives us a little bit more, brightens up a bit, right? A little bit less flat. Okay, and maybe we want to give the sky a similar treatment. You can use levels, you can use curves, it all kind of works out. Maybe, yeah, something like that is probably okay. You know, then we can, one thing that kind of helps with blending things together is just to do more global adjustments. So, you know, we bring in a bit of contrast here, and that looks a little bit better already. So this is just a levels layer that I've applied globally. The other ones I just clipped to the individual layers. So this just kind of helps, it's an adjustment layer, and doing a global adjustment layer on top of blended layers just kind of helps them blend together because it's an adjustment that's made globally. From here, I mean, like we're pretty close to finishing. There might be some more sort of fine tuning that we want to do when it comes to colors or the edge or contrast or anything like that. I'm just gonna leave it for now. Okay, I'm just back in Lightroom now, so I'm in the same folder, and I've previously flagged all my stars as blue. So if I tell Photoshop, or sorry, I flagged all my meteors as blue. So if I tell Lightroom that I just want to filter for the blue labeled images, then it just gives me all the stars that I've selected already, or sorry, all the meteors. And so these ones I've already kind of processed a bit. You can see that in here I've just added a lot of contrast, and if I just hit the crop tool, you can see that I had a number of images that were the entire sky, and what I did is I just cropped them down to as tight around the meteor as I could get, basically. This reduces the file size of the image that I'm going to import into Photoshop. The reason why I added the contrast there, and I'll show you in a minute, I'll just grab a selection of meteors here. Maybe I'll just grab 10 or 11 meteors here. It looks like I have 11 selected. Okay, so I'm just going to go here and I'm going to say edit in Photoshop. So it's going to open them all as an individual file in Photoshop, which is okay. So you just got a bit of a moment here to process that request. Okay, so now I'm back into Photoshop, and you can see I've got all these layers selected here. Just as an example, if I zoom in here, one thing I thought I'd mention is you can see how the stars are trailing somewhat significantly in this photo. The reason why is because I decided I'd just shoot with 30-second exposures. It's the longest that my camera will do without having to use an interpolometer. I like an external interpolometer. And the stars don't actually matter because I was just taking pictures to try and capture the meteors. The problem with capturing meteors is that you can't predict when they're going to happen, and by the time you click the shutter button, it's probably too late. So the best thing to do is to just be capturing the sky continuously, and ideally you catch a few meteors as they happen in your exposures because you're just taking constant exposure to the sky. So having a longer exposure maybe gives you fewer breaks between your exposures and less chance that you're going to miss a meteor because they happen pretty quick. Okay, so basically all I do with the meteors is I grab the move tool and I'm just going to drag them across to the image that I'm working in. Okay, and I'm just going to grab a few more. Yeah, why not? Okay. Now, as I'm going through these images, I can actually just go ahead and close out these other images because I don't need them anymore once I've placed them into my shot here. I think I took about 500 photos and I only captured about 50 meteors. So maybe about 10% that evening, which actually is quite a high ratio for a meteor shower. The Geminids are considered one of the strongest meteor showers every year. Okay, you know what, that's enough for now. So what I did previously is I just grabbed the ellipse tool here, maybe grab a nice bright color like red. Okay, so there's actually 2 stars, or sorry, this is part of Orion, but there's the Gemini constellation, which is kind of up around this corner here. So what I did previously is I just kind of drew myself a circle here. The reason why I just put this here is because I wanted to put it over where the constellation Gemini is. The Geminid meteor showers, the radial point is from the constellation Gemini, so they all kind of come from that point and they go outwards. From there, I just grab a layer here, so maybe we'll just go Command T. Which one are we grabbing here? Okay, we'll stick this up here, and maybe we'll just kind of twist it so it looks like it's coming from that radial point. I'm just going to zoom in on that meteor. Okay, there we go. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this is the blend mode. I'm going to just set it to lighten, and that's going to only show the brightest parts here. It's going, anything that's darker on the layer, or anything that's brighter, don't want that. So I've actually got a really soft brush here. What I'm going to do is make it a harder brush, which makes a hard edge, and maybe I'll just bring the size down a little bit so I can see that there's a little bit of artifacts from the image of the meteor in it. I'm just going to quickly kind of go in, clean that up a bit. Now, if I want to do this in a more non-destructive way, what all I have to do here is just create a layer mask and switch over to a brush. I used the button is here. And again, anything that's painted black on the mask won't show through. So I can just kind of, oops, I got white selected, so let's grab a black brush here and just kind of paint these stars out. Okay, first meteor blended in. Put this one down here. Have it flying through Orion here. Okay, we'll just do the last one that we've got here, and now once I have all the meteors in here placed the way I want to, I just hit the delete button on that red ring, and I'm just left with the meteors. So that's basically the way that I edit these types of photos. Obviously, you could do more color adjustments, stuff like that. Whatever kind of suits your taste, and you can add in more meteors if you want to. Obviously, I only used about a third of the meteors I captured, so I could put significantly more in, as I have with the final image, and the final image that I edited previously. So this is the final image that I created when I edited this previously. There's a little bit more saturation, a little bit more contrast, and obviously I added in a few more meteors. But this is my basic workflow when I am editing a meteor shower photograph. So with that, the Perseids is peaking on August 11th, which is next week. So it's a good time to start planning a location that you want to be in to shoot the meteors, and preparing whatever gear checklist you need. With that, happy hunting. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit subscribe. Let me know that you want to see more tutorial videos from me in the future by hitting the subscribe button. And thanks for watching.